Okay, so welcome, Lauren. It is such an immense honor and joy to have you here with us today. A little bit of a background. We met, I have no idea, maybe like 8 years ago or something at Shoreditch House. It's a really long time ago. I remember you started coming to my classes. These are some of the few things that I remember. I remember I started coming to my classes. I always absolutely loved your energy. I remember one day we had a chat about Somerset or Glastonbury. Is that right? I feel like there was
Oh,
a, and you were like, oh yeah, I grew up there. Is that right? Did you grow up around Somerset? Okay,
yeah,
just
I grew up near Glastonbury.
okay, amazing. This sort of came back to me today when I was tuning into our podcast session. And then I also remember that you mentioned to me that your whole sort of reason for starting to really get into food in and using, not using, but enjoying food and the world of food and flavor was very much linked to your mental health. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is me like, listen, Lauren, I've done zero research. I don't fully actually know what you do. I just know that you are a beacon of joy and love. It's a joy to have you here with us today. And I just wanted to give a little heads up that that's kind of what inspired me to reach out to you and go, hey, can we please have a conversation? So if you are happy to start sharing, Lauren, then I would like us to go back to that moment where I don't know how old you were, I don't know where you were in your life, but that moment that where something started to pivot within you, where you started to link up mental health, a feeling of joy, a feeling of creativity, whatever it was for you, and then linking that into food. Like, where did you find yourself in life before that came in?
Yeah, well, gosh, firstly, great memory because I was also thinking back. And yeah, your yoga classes used to be such a little haven when I was like in my very full-on moment in London, just setting up businesses and stuff. So that was always my like weekly thing where I was like, okay, just take this moment, do your thing. And I was always so inspired. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here with you after ages as well. Such a treat. Where to begin? So I've always loved food. Like it has always been one of those things that since I was a kid, my mum would just let me loose in the kitchen and I would be cooking things, like mixing things together, like whatever it may be. And as I got older, I started to really like, love to do kind of dinner parties for my friends, or if we had, I don't know, sort of family event, I would always be the one doing the food. But I never saw it as a career. It was this thing I did, and it was just like, that's it. So I went off to art school. I decided to do like an art foundation course, and then I went on to do fashion design and marketing. And during that time, like many people who go, especially to art school, so many people around me had various mental health issues. And it was the first time I'd really come across anything. I think when we were growing up, there wasn't so much terminology. So, you might have come across people struggling with different things, but we didn't necessarily have the words for it. So during that time, I fell in love, and my boyfriend at the time was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which was something that we literally there was a TV show we all used to watch, and we were like, they started to talk about bipolar, and we were like, that is so familiar. Like, when you're like, this is crazy, and then over that
Mm.
kind of those months and years, it kind of became the word, and when you're like, oh, that is what this is, and we
Yeah,
started to understand, like, and we didn't really at that time, it was so there was no common knowledge about treatment, support, anything.
yeah,
So that was my first kind of experience with like the world of like mental health, and just kind of joining the dots between like, okay, like this is what's happening, not really understanding like the kind of cause effect things, but just thinking like, just piecing things together. And very, very long story short, this same boyfriend, like a little while later, ended up having a really like bad experience with his mental health over that time, didn't get the help he needed, and he ended up taking his life. So that sent me into like a whole spiral where obviously like my world collapsed. It was like again, like I had never really heard of this happening before, living, it was a very crazy thing. And I then started to experience eating disorders, and my like whole relationship with food was like obviously totally turned upside down. So so that went on for like many years. So from going from like loving food, loving art, sort of going down one path, everything just falling to the ground, and obviously like trying, yeah, dealing with that, finding the right help. And eventually, many years into my own sort of eating disorders and mental health things going on, then I had some amazing support. Finally found an amazing therapist. I started to go to acupuncture. I went down a very alternative route. I knew that the kind of mainstream medicine that was kind of being trying to be pushed on me, I really was like, I know this isn't going to be the thing for me. So I was
Yeah.
very lucky that eventually I kind of found my way. And when things shifted and I finally wanted to get better, then it was through acupuncture actually that I felt my energy literally just turn upside down. It went from like kind of just about surviving and not sure actually if I wanted to actually being like, let's go. I'm so motivated to kind of like change my life. And I reconnected with food and decided to work out my own way to sort of heal my mind, heal my mental health and everything around that. So I was just about finishing like a 5-year degree in fashion design
Mm.
and realized also through those experiences that I wasn't finding anything that was particularly like giving me any purpose. It felt very superficial, the opportunities that I was sort of, looking at getting into.
Mm.
And I ended up, because of this kind of little healing experience, deciding to write my dissertation on rebranding mental health with a
Mm.
trend towards wellness. So this is like, I don't know how many years ago, quite a lot of years ago. Um, Probably like 13 years ago. So it was just about when the wellness industry was like just starting. So we were hearing names like Deliciously Ella, or like
Mm.
there was like the first recipe books coming out that were sort of more around like health and food rather than just being like, the traditional like Leiths or Mary Berry or things that I remember growing up with. And so I ended up kind of really pouring everything into this, what ended up being a book, and which I called the Recipe for Wellbeing. So it was kind of like a handbook for like how to live, but from like a fashion and like trend point of view. And it literally became my handbook for my life ever since. And that book, like, so I finished my degree, was like, I don't want to do the fashion thing. I really want to go into food. I'd seen the impact of like what I didn't realize with when I was at uni and like all of those things was like the knock-on effect. Like, I'm going out, I'm drinking all the time, I'm doing all of these things, and maybe there is an underlying thing here, but that actually affects that, like we just didn't realize like it wasn't there. So I started to really like when I was going through my own sort of recovery process, start to be like, okay, like what is affecting me? What's making me feel good? I realized I was quite intolerant. I'd wrecked my body. And there were so many things that I stopped eating and then started eating, like, like things like cheese or gluten, where I was like, whoa, like I'm feeling horrible. Like I wouldn't be able to walk. Things would make me just feel like crippled. And that sort of really like there were so many light bulb moments in that time where I was like, okay, like this is like really important stuff. Like the information is not there. So yeah, so I had this book, went out into the world and decided to like get every job I could find in the food world. So I had like 6 or 7 jobs at the time working at like farm shops or pubs or like just, like entry level, whatever I could do things. And yeah, I was so lucky with who I met during that time. It really opened up like a whole new world. And I ended up taking loads of courses in food. There was nothing in health. Like it was all kind of like, general food or like raw food. So I started to take like lots of short courses in things like raw food or like kind of more specialist things. And yeah, it's quite a long story, but
No,
the
it's I mean I'm sitting here and I'm so it's very rare that I'm lost for words, but my heart is just, reaching out to you right now, Lauren, so much. I also because, obviously personally, I now I can't help but think back to all the years that you did used to come to my classes and I saw you and we would have brief chats, but I had no idea that all of that was going on for you. And, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your ex boyfriend. I work a lot with people that are going through similar situations to what it sounds like the two of you were experiencing, and obviously he was experiencing. one of my best friend's little sister committed suicide. So it's a yeah, it's a whole world that that I'm always there for support. But yeah, I just want to, I can't just skip past that like a doodly doodly. This is a very, very potent and obviously, thankfully, you chose it to be a turning point in your life. And I think this was a key moment that you kept actually saying those words, which I'm sure you noticed. You kept saying, that was the moment when I chose life. That was the moment when I chose, when I chose to get better. And this is such a crucial part of the puzzle of being a human being. We must choose to want to live. And as much as it can sound, it can sound really like sort of basics, like, well, obviously everyone chooses to live. And I can sit here on the other side and go, no, absolutely not. Everyone chooses to live. And without sounding doom and gloom, we have to, and it's so layered. We're such a peeled onion, right? Or a beautiful rose petal as a human being. There's so many layers to our experience. There's so many layers within our psyche. And sometimes we have to reach that point of kind of like, it's not that there's no return, but it's either like you either choose the down or the up, and it is a choice and no one else can make it for you. And thankfully you decided to reach out and you got the support and you received the support. But as we all know, like even just deciding to open up and go, hey, I'm not okay. And I, especially at that time, because I'm so with you at that moment in time, that it sounds like, all those years ago when you were really going through that experience, we had so little in terms of informations, in terms of names for experiences people were having. Even like mental wellness was not talked about, let alone even wellness that was looked upon as kind of vanity. It was like, it's a bit of fluffy, having a hot bath kind of experience, right? Even me as a yoga teacher and as a wellness coach, it was kind of like a bit of a fluffy thing. People didn't really fully understand. Obviously, then we went into COVID and all of a sudden everyone was like, oh my God, we need Josie. We need wellness coaches. This is no longer like a separate thing. It's no longer just like the pretty cherry on the cake. It's something that really has, that allows us to have roots and have a foundation from which we can grow. And so first of all, just wanted to say my heart really reaches out to you. And although that obviously, we can't go back in time, but I hope I was there for you, even just in the ways that I could be without knowing what was going on for you. So just wanted to give you that virtual hug. And then also just, something that's very interesting in terms of synchronicity. Yesterday, I interviewed another wonderful woman called Melissa, who basically about 5 years ago had kind of like almost overnight woke up and had this deep sort of like physically experienced, embodied experience of, I can no longer harm the earth. So, I know that resonates. And it was that thing. So she basically changed her whole life around. And instead of going, I need to have more and more and more, which is quite often what society teaches us, right? In order to not have scarcity and not feel fear and all of that, we must have more and more and more. She went the other way around. So she's now, as much as she can, zero packaging. She's moved out of her home country. She lives in the mountains. And I'm not saying that has to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's just beautiful that I did that with her yesterday and listening to her experiences. And really when we boil down to it, it boils down to she had a calling for the earth. She had this deep connection with the earth that kind of almost came out of nowhere. This kind of like, again, a calling and a deep desire to, to protect and love and care for our earth. And in the same way, by doing that, it actually is the same way she's choosing her life too. And similarly to you, food is, as much as it's tasty and flavorsome and it's beautiful, and of course it's a necessity, but above anything, it's our connection to our planet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the thing. And I think when you realize, or you have these kind of experiences, it just shifts the way you look at things. Something that's like super normal or like, a particular way of living, can just turn everything around.
And can I ask you, so I'm just going to fast forward, not in terms of your career, but actually more in terms of your personal relationship or, what are some of the words or some of the imagery or some of the experiences or maybe rituals that you have in everyday life that gives you a deeper sense of connecting to the earth?
Ooh.
Mm.
Um, I mean, to be honest, for me, it changes like all the time. I think from that time and like ever since, yoga obviously was like has been a huge part of my life. And wherever I've worked and lived in many places all over the world now, and always like the first thing I do is find like the studio, find where I'm going, just try and have that as a kind of anchor point, because as soon as that slips, or like if I'm doing something where I can't find work that into my day, I know like after a few weeks and I start to just feel like so much more disconnected from myself, which obviously has the knock-on effect to connection to everything, right? So that's definitely a huge thing. And then also, I mean, like it might sound obvious as we're talking about food, but like cooking and being like hands-on with like plants, where I'm getting things from, like it's yeah, I did the first supper club or like event that I've done in a couple of years the other day for my book launch, and I haven't really been like, I mean, I've been like cooking for myself and I've been teaching and I've been doing other things, but what I realized was I just love that process of like finding out what's available. I was working with a couple of foragers, and when you can like really get like the more like, not just your standard stuff, but I love to see like all the little roots and shoots and things that are coming out. So for me, that always feels really exciting, and it like inspires me in lots of different ways. So yeah, those I have like many different little food rituals, whether that's like, brewing things, concocting little potions. Like there's so many things that I just like naturally do, whether it's like as simple as infusing water with like local herbs wherever I am. Like I love to be like, okay, where am I? What's around here? And then I'll always have some sort of water with like something inside it, because it's like a nice, connection thing. So yeah, many things, but I definitely think those are my like always things.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And you just inspired me. I just went to teach earlier today, and at the office they actually have so many wonderful herbs in the water. And I always go, oh, I must do that when I come home, because I have lots of crystals in our water, which is beautiful. So that's one of the things I do. I always have crystals in our water, but I go through periods where I remember about the herb, all the herbs and even just the lemons and berries or whatever you have, cucumbers is so beautiful as well. And I want to ask you, because so from my own personal experience, this whole thing about relating to food was just something that, and again, as a form of creativity, as an outlet, as a connection to earth, whatever it was and is something that, similarly to you, I was really lucky as a kid. I was always allowed to kind of just do whatever I wanted in the kitchen. I mean, to a certain extent. And then when I wasn't allowed, I would do it early in the morning before my parents got up. For me, it was like just this whole universe where I could go in and just experiment. And I remember even as a kid, I would I really loved baking as a kid, because it was that thing of like you put random things in a bowl, you put it into the oven, and then magic happens in that oven. Right? And then also I remember as a kid that, you know, without knowing, I would put fruits in water and then I would leave it in the water overnight in the fridge and I would take it out. And I remember my parents being like, what's all that floaty stuff in the water? But obviously, that was my way of experimenting. And I think, I can now look back and now listening to your story, knowing that I was encouraged to do this and I was allowed to do this, set me up for a life where there was already a baseline of a connection to the earth and where our connection with the earth, but also a baseline of a love of food and a love of putting things together, and the joy through that. So yeah, anyway, little side story. I just wanted to mention that because that's a really nice thing to connect around as well. And I do the same as you. So I also travel a lot. And even though I am a yoga teacher, I love taking everyone else's class. So it's the same thing I do. The first thing I do, I will literally be like, where's the studio? And that's kind of the way that you are immediately secured that you have some like-minded people around you, like a sense of home or a sense of community wherever you are on the planet, right?
Yeah, so true.
I love that, Lauren. And can I ask you, so are you teaching people at the moment? Are you doing cooking
So,
courses as well, or?
well, these days I'm living in Bali and I'm teaching over there. So I've just been back because I launched a new book. So I've been back in London for like, or well, in the Cotswolds for Christmas and then launching the book up in London. But my kind of, yeah, day to day at the moment is I'm, yeah, running kind of culinary immersions. They're like 2 week kind of cooking courses in collaboration with Alchemy Academy in Bali, which is an amazing, like, we do raw food courses, we do cooked classes. It's linked with a restaurant which is like one of the best vegan restaurants in the world. And yeah, it's been like a new chapter. I've just been living there since last July, but working there on and off for a little while. So it's, yeah, it's been really nice to feel kind of like refreshed by where you are. Like, you know, when you kind of, I got into, you know, I was in London for 5 years, and before that I had always lived and worked abroad. And teaching is normally the thing that takes me to these different places, although I do many different things in food, whether it's like recipes, and I still do quite a few like photo shoots and like different kind of creative projects. But yeah, teaching is the main thing that's going on.
Oh my God. And I love that you're living in Bali. It's one of my favorite places. Oh, how wonderful. Oh, so happy for you, Lauren. So happy. This is so gorgeous. And can I just ask, so your new book, what is your new book called? Are you allowed to say it yet? Is it out yet?
Yeah, it's all out. It came out last week. So,
Oh.
yeah, the new book is Plant Academy, the cookbook. So, I have a cookery school, which is what's kind of connected to the school in Bali, Alchemy Academy. And so, we're collaborating on courses that are teaching the like, well, all things plant-based always, but always the kind of, yeah, creative techniques, using local ingredients, always supercharging things with adaptogens, doing things in a way that really hopefully connects the people that do those recipes or take the courses with not only what they're eating, but how it makes them feel and like the knock-on effect, whether you're like a professional or someone that just wants to go deeper into food or just generally cook, you know, cook more, enjoy nice things. Um, so yeah, so the new book is Plant Academy, the cookbook, and it's filled with recipes, but also more about like techniques. So what I found, so my first book is Mind Food. So my kind of the little intro that I just gave, that was very much like my was it's yeah, portal into getting into food. And although plant-based food always became like the how I communicated with people and like the kind of drive forward, and it's something obviously that's been become really popular over the years, but mental health and like mind food was always why, you know, that's like always been my like driving force. Like I love all things plant-based. I think it's like so exciting and creative and important, but the mental health aspect has always been my, you know, like the real motivator. So the first book was more like the story, but also all about like those like mental health connections. And then I realized through that book that lots of people get recipe books and there's like they're just overwhelmed. There's like 100 recipes and you open this book, and for so many people that's actually like too much. So
Mm.
this book is all like tiny, tiny recipes, and it's all about kind of really showing the foundations of all things plant-based. So how to make like milks and butters and things that's like like kind of we're used to just in traditional cooking, you know, buying these ingredients, or, you know, like we were saying about baking, like we're all kind of lots of people have quite a familiarity. Like, say if you were like, what's in a cake? You'd be like, right, eggs, milk, sugar, butter, you know, we know.
Mm.
But when it comes to vegan food or doing things plant-based, we don't really have, well, we're developing now. It's like that language of how to understand, like, how do I make this recipe? And rather than just using like basic store-bought substitutions, it's about like understanding, like, oh, okay, if I wanted to do like, say if I wanted to make like Parmesan cheese vegan, it's not like, oh, I just like swap it for vegan Parmesan cheese. It's like, okay, that's salty, it's fatty, what would have that same quality? And it shows people like, ah, like you could use these things because it's more about the quality and like what they are. So it's all about understanding whole foods and ingredients. Yes.
And I love that so much because so basically I remember again this is going back like 22 years ago or something here in London. I remember I was in Soho one day and they had this really big like double decker London bus parked just off Golden Square behind Piccadilly Circus. And they had a massive sign on it saying, come in and talk to us about being raw vegan. And I remember at the time everyone was like, what is even a vegan and what is raw? And I remember like there was no one on the bus and I walked in and I would never attach the name shy to me, but I actually felt really shy because I was like, I want to know, but I don't really know. So I was like one of the only people on this bus. And then a few years later, I decided to run raw vegan yoga retreat in Sicily, and I ended up doing all the food for it. And we actually had the family coming over. It was a family house of a friend, and the family ended up coming over for dinner, and I asked, oh, obviously come and join, and but they were like, no, we just want to watch what you eat. We don't want to taste it. It was hilarious. But anyway, my whole long story is just Lauren, did this idea of you know offering up questions for people to ask, questions for people to ask themselves so they can actually start to, again, with proper knowledge and proper wisdom, start to put their meals together in a creative way instead of just substituting. So I never ever, like I was vegan for probably 15 years, but I never went like, oh, I used to have this and I'm just going to substitute it with all this other stuff. That's not my school of thinking, but but I think this is such a potent point you're making, and obviously you know all about it because it's your world. But even just I'm by no means a chef, but I love to cook, and this idea when people were asking me like, oh, but isn't what do you cook then? And my answer is the same as it is now today, that I'm vegetarian. I eat a bit of fish, but the answer is still the same, which is I cook whatever is available on that day, wherever I find myself. Like I'm, and so the fact that you're teaching in a way that teaches people what is salty, what is fatty, how would we put these flavors together? You're teaching essentially the foundations of anything to do with life. And I find it so beautiful because it's just one of the biggest things. Like a lot of people go, oh, I'm not vegan. And then you look at what they eat. These are also my clients. And I'm sitting there going, you're getting no nutrition. Like this is not a good match. So it's just so beautiful to hear that you really inspire empowerment through your cooking style and your cooking wisdom. So absolutely amazing. And I want to ask you something else as well, Lauren. Um, Someone who wanted to explore more of a link between their mental well-being, and I also would like to add emotional well-being, because obviously those two go together. And doing so through food, where could be a place one could start?
Well, I think that, it's one of those things that is, I think, like many things these days, there's so much information, like out there, you can kind of like start looking, but I think that it's one of those things that just can't be like generalized. Like there's no like
Mm.
prescription, It's like we all
There's
think
no
like, okay,
recipe.
yeah, exactly. There's no recipe, there's no prescription. It's like you could think like, okay, I'm feeling like this, so I should have, I've heard this is good. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe, but it's not necessarily for everyone. So what I always tend to say is it's kind of like connecting what you're having and how you feel. So it might be like, we would for sure both have slightly different things that are going to give us like comfort, other things that might give us energy. For one person, they might have a particular thing and they like feel this huge like, oh, I feel so much more relaxed, I feel, and for someone else that might be like, oh, I don't know this food, like it's like I'm not familiar. So I always think step one is kind of like just tuning in, and what I did in Mind Food was I kind of coded all of the recipes with a feeling. So not necessarily to say like this will make you feel like this, but to say like this is like the vibe. How would you feel if you had it? So it's like I always say I always forget one, but they are like balance, so things that bring you into balance, focus, like things that if you have a big task to do that can help to just sort of support you. Like calm, obviously to like relax, calm. Um, Energize, and then there's one other which I'm obviously going to forget, but I mean that's the gist. But it's about sort of like thinking about those things, or like say if you're thinking like, right, in general, the thing I'm struggling with is like energy. So it's like, okay, like when do I feel energized? And just the first step is just that, like, okay, like I don't feel like that now, but what could make me feel like that? And for sure, there's always like little hacks that you can do. And I think just by like identifying at first the problem and like what can help that you just already know, then you can like build on that, because then you can think like, okay, maybe it is this like low energy thing. Maybe that's getting me like really down. And then you could be like, okay, what does give me energy? And then diving further. So then you would go into like, okay, so this energy, maybe I'm feeling down, and then you can then, what I like to do is kind of start to look at color, like
Oh
then
my God. Oh
like,
my God. Sorry, I'm going to have to say this because I'm sitting here and I was about to say colors. And then you were like, and then I look at colors. I was like, yes, over to you.
it's such a thing. It's such a thing. And like, we don't necessarily think about it. You know, there's obviously like health wise, like, you know, problems with like circulation, red, like, you know, there's different things, but the same with mood. So say I'll go down the same low energy route, but things that are bright. So it's like, okay, what's bright? Like what can I have that's like a bright color? And it could just be as simple as like, you know, yellow, orange, like warm looking foods. So that could be even like, you know, things like the things that everyone would have access to. So like roasted carrots or like sunny looking things, but also more like potent herbs. So like saffron, for example, is something that you can put like a pinch. I have an amazing brand that I work with called Wonder Workshop who sell this sustainable saffron. It's a really good price, and it's I literally get one tub, it will last me forever, and I'll just put like a few strands in water, whether it's hot or cold, and I'll just drink that. And that is like it's known as the happy herb, and it literally just lifts you up. But it's something that, you know, there's so many adaptogens and mushrooms, and like I love all of that stuff. But there's actually many things that is kind of like a culinary herb, like rosemary as well. Rosemary, amazing for your memory. You know, there's different herbs and also things that you might have association with. Like, say, if, I don't know, when you were younger, it could be that, you know, maybe your mother or someone like always had like lavender, and then you're like, oh, that always makes me feel like really comforted, which I know is like a common, that's like a very common thing for for everyone with lavender. But you can just really simply like include that more in your life. Just tuning into those little things is huge.
100% Lauren, and I'm just sitting here like, I know that for the podcast people you won't be able to see it, but I'm like nodding and like giving hearts and like all of this away on the backside listening to you, because it's exactly how I share and how I look at aromatherapy. So I run a lot of workshops on aromatherapy, and it's exactly the same as you just described. Obviously, as an individual, first of all, there will be, one person's medicine is another person's poison, etc. Right? And then there's also all of the attachment, all the stories that we have experienced through our time on this planet, right? So our memory box, like you were just mentioning. So what for one person will be a smell or a taste that brings comfort, and yay, this is when I used to be at Granite's place and I used to feel safe and I was loved and all was well, essentially. Could be another person's, oh my God, I'm getting a headache, I'm nauseous, it's not their kind of smell or taste or even color scheme, and that's okay too. So it is really like, listen to your own intuition and listen to your own instinct. Like, what is your body telling you about this, right? And the same thing, linking it to smell. So whether you're into aromatherapy or not, but just smelling your food and smelling what you're going to be drinking and really using all of your senses. And again, that in itself is a stress release because you're popping out of head and you're popping into your body, right? It's a mindfulness practice. So I'm just sitting here loving that so much. It's also, I hope we one day will do something together, Lauren, because I'm sitting here going, oh, when I run retreats, this is always like, I bring people into the kitchen and I'm like, this is how we can use the essential oils. And this is not rocket science. This is fun. This is playful, It gives us a sense of deep connection to our planet and a sense of deep connection to being part of this bigger picture of life, So yeah, oh, I love that. Thank you.
It's such a thing. Yeah, I know. I was just going to add that, like, one other thing that, like, talking about all the senses is also like how things look. Like, I'm such a visual person. I think, like we're all, we love to make things look nice. And especially, I don't know, there's like something when you're into these, like, if you're into like yoga and health, we appreciate, like how things are, taking a bit of care. But there's obviously it's not going like as far as making these like super fancy plates and it's not, but sometimes we can just forget that, like, just putting things nicely in a way, like rather than just like dumping it on a plate, it's like, oh, okay, like I can actually just put these things nicely, put a little bright, maybe something fresh on top, and that even can go such a long way, just to make things look more like, put that nice good energy into what you're about to have, and it literally changes everything.
Oh, 100%. And even just, and again, like, whether you are into praying or not, but actually just having a moment and just giving a little thanks, just a little moment, like you said, use your senses. watch what you're about to eat and just take a brief moment to just say thank you, because so many people and so many processes and so many gorgeous little beings and little animals and little processes on this planet had to take place in order for this gorgeous meal to land on your plate, right? So just bringing in that element of gratitude as well, even if it's just a brief moment, is just beautiful. Okay, I want to ask you, I could speak to you all day, but I'm also aware of time. So I want to just, put that on the side. And then I want to ask you, how do you, and I know you've already covered this, but still, let's go there. How do you choose or manage or feel guided to lead what I describe as a soul-led life? So whatever comes up for you when I say those words, how do you live a soul-led life? So obviously right now you're living in Bali and you said you're really loving living there. So perhaps tell us what made you decide to go and spend time there?
Yeah, I love that question. It's interesting actually, because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot over the last kind of couple of years. When you obviously like I've always kind of been very lucky in that since having this bit of the whole experience with my mental health, having this kind of like almost like waking up to okay, I can do things my own way. How do I want to live? And ever since, like I've always had my own businesses, like I've always sort of carved out this kind of slightly, less normal, like less known path, which has been incredible. And I've always, felt like the right opportunities have presented themselves. It's been, and you're aligned and you think like, okay, yeah, this is working, like things are happening. But a few years ago, like I was living in London and that stopped happening. I was like, I feel like everything is heavy. Like, I've been
Mm,
here, like it's not feeling so aligned. I'm not feeling like excited. I felt like I just had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And
mm,
yeah, it was sort of like everything was going on. So with this kind of the living a soul-led life, I think I've always made such an effort to be like very conscious about like, okay, what am I saying yes to? What direction do I want to go in? And not in a way that's like super, super like strict, but in a way like, okay, the bigger picture is over here.
mhm.
Is this thing that I'm saying yes to, or this thing I'm spending my time on, is it taking me there?
Yeah.
And for a long time it was. And then I got to the point in London where I felt like I had no, like I loved my work in many ways, but I just had no social life. I was like, okay, something is missing.
Yeah.
I have many friends, I have many people I know, but like I'm not, although I have like nice things I do, I'm not like prioritizing, that was kind of like on the back burner, like, well, this is a priority, but then this is like over here.
Mm.
And it started to kind of take its toll in many ways. And so what happened a couple of years ago, I went to Mexico, had a bit of a like another little epiphany moment, came back and I was like, everything must go. I think I had in my astrology, I'm super into like astrology and human design and all of the things.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
had to,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
my next question for you is actually what your three big
Ah,
ones are is in astrology. So we'll go there in a second. Okay, go on, go on. You were in
um,
Mexico.
yeah, well, no, I had like something I read about like some sort of little astrology thing. It was like burn everything to the ground and start again. And I was like, it was this little thing was there. I got back from Mexico and like for whatever reason, it was just like everything must go. And when like a decision is just carrying you forward and you're like, what am I doing? But I was just doing it. So I was like closing
100%.
like I let go of my apartment. I had a studio in London and the person that I had it with, we just tore it to bits. We sold everything. It was just this like it literally happened in a month. It was like everything must go. And different like projects that I had, like different things happened with like everything where it was like, okay, it's like easily falling away, and you're like, everything
Hmm.
must go. So it was like, yeah, that was like a needed moment of like, this isn't working, something needs to change. I have lots of like very drastic endings in my life. That's kind of tends to be the way it happens. But with Bali, it's somewhere that I've always been. I've always loved it, but never sort of thought again, not it wasn't like an obvious decision, like, oh, I could just, let's live in Bali. It was like, no, has to make sense. I have to have like something I feel excited by. I need to feel like a sense of like I could build community there. And yeah, it just so kind of worked out that someone I know that has Alchemy and Alchemy Academy, then there was an opportunity to be there more. And just by being there, and suddenly again, it's like, this is the place. And so I think I always really try and like be as conscious as possible. There's definitely been things, especially over these last 2 years of changing everything, that I've been like, I'm trying this, but actually no, like this is not what I want to be doing. But it's been like a really useful process, and I'm just about feeling like in Bali, I feel very at home there. Like I've always like I'm from Glastonbury. I've always lived in these quite like alternative places. It's like I love that vibe. And I think, but just by being aware of like that and being like still sticking to this kind of like, okay, what is my like the kind of thing that drives me forward? What do I want to do? Like, what's the kind of greater vision here? Then Bali is giving me so much more balance with like work and life, like meeting amazing people. I feel really like lit up by that in a way that I never was. Not that I met so many amazing people in London, but I just feel more like I have space for it, you know? So it's really nice to have that feeling of like spaciousness, which is something that I've for sure been calling in, and actually is like a huge part of my astrology and everything. It's like the main thing. It's like you need space, you need this, da da da. So yeah, that's been and so yeah, where I was going with that as well is that by kind of learning more about my astrology and human design, numerology, all the things, that has given me so much permission to be like, no, this is what you need. You know, it's not just like, oh, I feel like maybe, or like, you know, it gives you that what's the word? It reaffirms
Yeah.
what you know inside. And there's also things that maybe you can go deeper into when you're like, yes, it's always sort of been there, but maybe I didn't have the words for it. And it's you know, it's helped me like crazy amounts.
Oh my God, I loved it so much. First of all, your personal story is just so gorgeous, and it's gorgeous how you are, you're co-creating with the universe, which of course we always are, all of us, but a lot of the time, we can get so in our head and so stuck on a goal or, not getting so stuck on how the goal should manifest. Not just that we have the dream. The dream is our why. That's what pulls us and drives us. But we can get so stuck on the how. And that's, that's when we can feel like we're fighting what's going on, right? And so the fact that you were like, no, this feels heavy. It didn't used to feel heavy. I feel heavy. I feel stuck. And instead of just, fighting with that, or even self-doubting your own experience in it, you just been like, no, this is not right. Like things needs to go. And that thing that you were like, we have to burn into the ground, it has to go, it all has to go. And I love that thing where you were saying that image of you being pulled forward, like, and you were just like, I don't know what the hell is happening, but I'm just going like, and when you have those experiences, I'm super blessed. I've had several of those epiphanies in my own life where it's that thing of, there is no going back. Like it's totally out of the question. It is not a mentally thought through 5-year business plan. It is literally, this needs to happen and it needs to happen now. And then going back around to what you were mentioning about how getting that almost permission slip by understanding more about your makeup, essentially as a soul, your soul's path, and I really get that, because similarly in my own work with with healing, with coaching, all of that, the main thing is, and it's exactly that. It's not what happens to us, it's the stories we attach around it, right? And it's that thing of the same thing about our own personality or our own experience of life. It's like, when we come to a moment of full acceptance of all that we are. So for instance, almost, in astrology, almost all of my planets are in fire. And I always used to feel like, oh, I'm too much and I care too much and I have too much emotion. And the minute I stopped doing that and I started to fully accept myself for who I am, kind of similar to, that's why I've always loved nature, because I always look at the trees and I'm like, no plant on this planet has ever gone, I don't want to grow any taller. I do not want to grow into the light. I do not like my shape. No plant does that. So why do we do that as human beings, right? So that thing of fully accepting oneself and really embracing all of it. That doesn't mean that we don't have dreams anymore. It doesn't mean that there are not things we are working on and lessons we're here to learn and all the rest of it, but really embracing all of it through, and whether that's, we get there through the modalities of different wisdom schools or however we get there, just our own soul's path, it doesn't matter how we get there, just knowing that there's so much help out there, there's so much support, and that thing of just following the calling that is a felt experience. It's just really beautiful. So, oh, Lauren, again, I'm just checking out on time. Before we finish, I just want to ask you, I know you've already shared so much wisdom, so many nuggets of gorgeousness with us here today. Um, is there a message? Because obviously you do what you do, not just for your own soul, but also for the soul of everyone else. This is really, you are fully, at least from what it feels like here, really, really, really living your purpose. And it's so beautiful to witness and it's so needed on this planet. Is there a message you would like to share with people that might be sort of, they've got a dream, and it doesn't have to be food related, just anything in life. They've got their dream, they've got those whispers in their heart, but there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of insecurity, there's a lot of what ifs. Anything special that pops in, like something for you that you keep coming back to time and time again? Anything at all?
Oh, there's so many things, but I think that when you said that about just, when you start things, I think I, come across so many people who like want to start something or have that little idea, but yeah, you don't necessarily know how, or like you don't feel like, oh, it's not the right time, don't have the resources. But I think these days we can get so caught up in like looking what everyone else is doing or thinking like, oh, I need like investment, or I need this or I need that. But it is like, I say this all the time, and I know it's not for everyone, but it's like, don't think too much, like just do something. And it's like now at the moment I'm starting this new product line and I'm doing it all like backwards because I like visual things. So I'm like, I can do the labels and I can do the photo shoot. Like I don't even need all of this other stuff. Like I can just, some things that I have, like, I don't need too much to do those things because I do them. It's like I can visually start to see how this brand is without needing like 100 jars of product or like anything. So it is just like doing something every day to be like, how can I make this happen? And whether it's literally just like spending time on it, like I'm going to spend like, I mean, as little like, 5-10 minutes a day, like thinking about it. And then that might turn into like, oh, actually, I want to do that. So it's, although, you know, yeah, it can be so easy to just see so much stuff about like business and creating and da, 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 or just in life as well. We see so many examples from other people, but actually just like nurturing that little thing every day and not like, yeah, not, don't get too, like, don't think too much. Like, it doesn't need to be like $1 million business. It can just like start. So, but it's funny actually, when you were saying that your astrology, I realized that's why I probably like your classes as well, because I'm also all fire. So when I say like, oh, it's the easiest to start, I'm like a Leo sun, Leo rising, Aries moon. I'm a manifester. So I know that like for some people, these things might be like, but how? So it is something naturally that I like to do. But I think the other thing is also, like surround yourself with people. Like if you meet someone that you're inspired by, you go to a yoga class and you love the teacher, be like, oh, go to this class more, like get in that energy of being like around people that are like clearly doing things and like reflecting what you want to be. And yeah, just doing like simple stuff like that. It can be just showing up to what you like. I like this thing. I'm just going to show up to it. And then it will like, it does rub off. It does sort of show you what's possible. And I think that's really exciting.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I love that so much. And it's exactly my little mantra as well. I'm like, we start anything by starting. The only thing that's actually ever required of us is to get out of bed and put one foot in front of the other. And everything in life is accumulative. So like you said, just thinking about it for a few minutes or doing a bit of research, maybe 1 hour a day, but do it every day. Everything is accumulative, and just take an action, because it will never be a better moment than now. You will never be more right, more rich, more this, more that. Like, just start and then see where that takes you. And that's all good. And I love I was getting so much Leo energy off you. Like since we started today, I sat here and I was like, she's a Leo. I just knew it. I was like, she's a Leo, she's a Leo, she's a Leo. I'm all Sagittarius. Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Oh, Lauren, such a joy. I am, on a side note, I'm hoping to be in Bali in not too long. So I would absolutely love to see you if you're going to be there. Yay.
Yeah.
But again, just honestly, Lawrence, thank you so, so, so much. Please send me over all the links to your gorgeous books and courses and whatever else you feel like you would like to share with people, so people can continue to be inspired by you, connect with you. And on behalf of the universe, we thank you very much for choosing to be here, Lauren. So thank you for choosing life. We are many that needs your gorgeous light. So thank you so much, Lauren, and I hope to see you in Bali.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, darling. I'm just gonna stop here. Yay!